When I think of One World, what most readily comes to my mind is the time that I spent in India last year. So I was very lucky that before the coronavirus pandemic struck, I was able to spend a few weeks in India. And I vividly remember one evening returning to the home of a friend of mine that I was staying with in Delhi. And it was quite late, it was very dark, and we were winding our way through these narrow streets on our way back home. And at one point in that journey, we turned a corner and moved into a square. The street sort of opened out into a square, and in the middle of that square was a statue which was illuminated very, very brightly, more brightly than anything else around. And there were candles around it, there were offerings, there were garlands, and lots and lots of light. And this figure was very striking. It was of a bespectacled man standing with a book in his left hand, which was clasped to his heart, and his right arm was extended straight outwards, and it was as if he was pointing the way. Now, this figure was, the statue was a figure of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who I sometimes introduce to people as the most significant figure of the 20th century that you've probably not heard of. So I'll say a little bit about Dr. Ambedkar. So he was born an untouchable, and what that meant was that it was considered polluting for him to touch anything which someone from a higher caste would then touch. So the idea of his touch was considered polluting, as was the case for his family and his entire community. They were very much right at the bottom of the social hierarchy and were treated as such. But through some luck and through enormous determination on his part, he gained an education. He first studied at Mumbai University, and then in Columbia in the United States, and at London School of Economics in the UK. And actually, by the time he'd finished his education and returned to India, he was now pretty much India's most qualified lawyer and economist. And so when it came to the drafting of the Indian constitution, around the time of independence in the middle part of the 20th century, it was naturally to Dr. Ambedkar that they turned, which is really something when you think about it. Someone from the untouchable community drafting the constitution of a whole nation. But that's what he did. And so Dr. Ambedkar's life story is it's just sort of one episode of overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles to bring greater freedom to his community. But I'm aware of Dr. Ambedkar not because I know very much about politics or history, but because of the very significant step he took at the end of his life. So in the last 2 months of his life, he'd been working up to this for many years, but he decided to convert to Buddhism along with some hundreds of thousands of his followers. And they did this as a way out of what Dr. Ambedkar described as the hell of caste. Converting to Buddhism it represented for them moving into a completely new life. So Dr. Ambedkar was very much a light in the darkness. It wasn't just that people appreciated him or they valued what he did. They actually wanted to be like him. They wanted to become a Buddhist. They wanted to gain an education. They wanted to be. They wanted to embody the dignity, the integrity, the friendship, the intelligence that he embodied. And they wanted to do this as a way to transcend as I said, this sort of hell of caste. And this is no coincidence. Buddhism places a very, very strong emphasis on exemplification too. Buddhists don't preach. We don't even teach in a sense of teaching a subject like maths or geography. And that's for one very simple reason, which is that Buddhism isn't taught, it's caught. And we catch it from exemplars. We catch it from people who exemplify the qualities of the Buddha's life, people like Dr. Ambedkar. And in his statue, that's exactly what he's doing, actually. He's exemplifying someone of incredible dignity, who's authored a work of considerable magnitude and scope, and he's pointing out the way to his people and saying, look, this is the way you can go to become free too. So Dr. Ambedkar is a real jewel among exemplars, and if you don't know much about his life story, I would highly encourage you to find out more. But we don't need to be exceptional in the way that Dr. Ambedkar was in order to exemplify the values of Buddhism. In one Buddhist teaching, it even says that our greatest benefactor is a spiritual friend in the form of an ordinary human being. And all that means is it's someone who's meeting their difficulties and trying to move in the right direction. You know, we don't need to be perfect. It's quite enough for us to be a work in progress and for others to see that we are a work in progress. We are moving in the right direction. At a time when many of us, I think, are looking for a light in the darkness, this teaching on exemplification shows that we can be one. It doesn't mean we need to single-handedly overhaul society or right the wrongs of the world. Actually, it's enough that in our friendships, in our interactions on social media, in our work, in our family lives, we exemplify the values that we want to see in the world. Now, this might sound small. It certainly doesn't sound like a revolution. But Dr. Ambedkar insisted that this, yes, it might be the slow way, but it is the sure way to making a difference. By exemplifying the values, these values of integrity, dignity, community, we too can be a light in the darkness.